Hello, welcome. I'm HFY Fantasy Stories. Here I prepare science fiction stories slash entertaining content slash informative videos slash scenarios that challenge your imagination for you. If you want to travel to different worlds, discover new stories, and join this adventure with me, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Let's get started. New Geneva never slept. It breathed, with neon arteries pulsing through its skyscraper canyons and steam rising like ghosts from steel-plated streets. No matter how high civilization climbed, down here the city still reeked of iron, sweat, and old lies. Detective Grant Mercer didn't mind the smell. Smells told stories. Blood had a scent. Fear too. In New Geneva, the smart ones learned to recognize both before it was too late. Tonight, tonight stank of something worse. Something impossible. They called him to Tower 9 at midnight, when the air was thick with the electric hum of orbital traffic overhead. VIP-level security swarmed the place like hornets, their polished exosuits glinting under sterile white lights. The kind of security detail you didn't hire unless you were very rich or very afraid. Inside, the scene looked clinical. Cold. A luxury suite that overlooked the Atlantic skyline. Empty, silent, and soaked in death. Counselor Arlen Weiss lay slumped over his desk, a half-finished diplomatic report flickering on the hollow screen in front of him. Dead. No wounds. No broken glass. No sign of forced entry. Locked room. Multiple guards stationed outside. Cameras untouched. Grant stood there, arms crossed, while the crime scene techs danced around like nervous bees, their scanners flickering with useless results. Cardiac arrest? One asked hopefully. "Don't insult me," Grant muttered. This wasn't a heart attack. Weiss's face was contorted in a final, silent scream, one that didn't fit the peaceful scene. Grant circled the room slowly. No shattered glass. No drugs. No scent of poison. Nothing his human senses could catch. But something tugged at his instincts. A presence, like standing in a room where someone just left, but the echo of them clung to the walls. Whatever killed Weiss didn't just kill him. It erased itself. Completely. When the text came up empty, no chemical traces, no foreign DNA, not even a residual heat signature. That's when Command made the call. They brought in her. Virith. Grant didn't like working with off-worlders. Especially not the Kalari. The moment she arrived, the room changed. Kalari moved like shadows. Tall, impossibly graceful figures with polished obsidian skin faintly patterned with their species' scent markings. Not tattoos, nothing so crude. Their markings shifted subtly depending on their emotional state, alive with chemical signals that only their kind could read. Virith stepped through the blast-sealed door without looking at anyone. She didn't need to. Her hooded head tilted once, slow, precise, the way a hawk might regard a field mouse. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft, but there was iron beneath it. "You call me for a puzzle," she said. "This is no puzzle." Grant arched a brow. "No, this is a message. No greeting. No introduction." Kalari weren't big on pleasantries. She moved through the room like liquid night, her elongated nostrils flaring almost imperceptibly. Every surface she passed, every corner, every detail, was inspected not by sight, but by scent. Humans relied on sight because their other senses were dull. The Kalari didn't have that weakness. Grant watched as she paused by Weiss's desk. Her head turned fractionally to the side. The pause was brief but telling. Something about it unsettled her. "Interesting." He waited. "Very clean," Virith murmured. "Too clean." Her fingers hovered above the surface of the desk, never touching. She inhaled slowly, the way a musician might draw breath before the first note of a symphony. And then, very quietly, she hissed. Not fear, not anger, recognition. Grant felt the shift in the room like a temperature drop. "What is it?" he asked. Her reply was flat. "Kalari technique." His blood ran cold. "How?" he asked. "Your people haven't been on Earth for decades." "The treaties. Treaties mean nothing to ghosts," Virith said simply. She straightened, eyes narrowing, pitch black and unreadable. "This is advanced masking. Someone with deep knowledge of our biology." Someone trained. Grant processed that. That narrowed things down. Dangerously. Can you track them? Her lip curled. Not quite a smile. Not warmth. Something sharper. That is why you hired me. She knelt, almost reverently, beside the chair where Weiss had died. Long, clawed fingertips traced the edge of the flooring, the tiniest residue of chemical displacement only she could detect. She stood. There is a trail, she said. But Grant noticed something else. A faint stiffness in her shoulders. Problem? He asked. Virith didn't answer for a long moment. When she did, her voice was colder than before. This masking, it is not just to escape detection. It is bait. Grant stiffened. A trap? For you? He asked. For us, Virith corrected. Someone is hunting my kind. Grant's jaw tightened. Assassins using Kalari methods. Human diplomats dying under impossible circumstances. An ascent trail laid not just to escape, but to lure. This wasn't just a murder. This was a statement. Whoever did this wasn't hiding. They wanted to be found. Grant exhaled slowly. I hope they know what they're doing, he muttered. Virith turned, her inky eyes gleaming like obsidian mirrors. So do I, she said. And then she stepped into the night, following a scent only she could see, a ghostly trail winding deeper into the city's veins. Whatever lay at the end of that trail wasn't just a killer. It was something worse. A predator who had studied the hunters. And now, the hunt had begun. For them both. The first thing Grant noticed when Virith moved through New Geneva's midnight arteries wasn't her silence. It was how the city shrank from her. Humans didn't stare at Kalari. Not twice. They looked away. Instinctive. Primal. Like watching a hawk cut across a field and pretending it was only the wind. Virith followed the trail with the unnatural poise of something that didn't belong on this world. Grace built for alien jungles, not human pavement. Her long limbs never brushed against walls or garbage piles. She didn't weave through crowds. They parted before her without a word. Grant followed, not because he trusted her, because he trusted his gut. And his gut told him something had gone wrong long before the diplomat's body went cold. They cut through Lower Midway, a sector where the city's skin peeled back. Towering neon gave way to corroded steel. Steam hissed from rusted pipes like exhausted breaths. Industrial ruins. Warehouses repurposed into black market dens. Forgotten chemical plants left to rot after the wars. It was the kind of place where ghosts left no footprints. Perfect for someone trying to erase a murder. Perfect for a hunter testing another. Grant spoke low. Careful. You're hesitating. Virith's head turned slightly. She didn't stop. I am thinking. That's not reassuring. Her reply was sharper than before. You hire me for results, not reassurance. A lesser man would have shut up. Grant wasn't lesser. What happens if this trail runs cold? He asked. She paused, only for a heartbeat. If this killer understands Kalari methods this well, it already has. Grant cursed under his breath. But Virith moved faster now, weaving between stacks of rusted containers that reeked of industrial solvents and decay. She paused at an alley choked with old piping. The scent trail was faint here, nearly gone, but her body language shifted. The predator had found something. Grant stepped closer. What is it? Virith's eyes, glossy black like wet stone, scanned the darkened alley walls. This is where the bait deepens, she said. He frowned. Explain? Her words came slow, controlled. The killer layered chemical decoys here. Human cleaning agents. Artificial fragrances. Industrial masking sprays. Grant knelt, rubbing the concrete with his gloved fingertips. Crude. Yes, Virith agreed. Effective against machines. Insulting to me. Her tone wasn't pride. It was cold fury. But then her expression, alien as it was, tightened. Grant noticed. What is it now? Something beneath the masking, Virith whispered. She leaned low. I recognized the molecular structure. It's old Kalari. Military-grade tracking suppression used during border conflicts. Grant straightened. That changed everything. How the hell would a human get their hands on that? She stood, and for the first time since meeting her, Virith hesitated. Someone studied us. Intimately. Our war tech. Our scent language. Our weaknesses. Grant's stomach turned. Studied was the wrong word. Obsessed. He pulled his sidearm instinctively, not for the killer, but because of what this meant. Whoever they were hunting didn't just want to escape detection. They wanted challenge, and they wanted her to see it. That's why the masking wasn't perfect. It wasn't supposed to be. Virith began moving again, down the alley, past layered chemical traps designed to throw off lesser trackers. But not her. Grant followed. The path twisted through forgotten undercity infrastructure, places most humans wouldn't survive long. Chemical waste pits, air thick with metal dust, corrosive dampness clinging to concrete like mold. And then they reached it, the abandoned biochemical lab, its decayed logo half buried in rust. Pharmax Human Biosolutions. Grant stared. That's impossible, he muttered. Virith's glance was sharp. You know this place. Used to be part of EarthGov's War Biotech Division, Grant said. Shut down after the Kalari conflict treaties. Officially buried. She studied him. Nothing stays buried forever. That's when Grant noticed the sigil, etched on the wall, not with paint, with Kalari chemical compounds that shimmered faintly under the lab's decaying security lights. A hunter's challenge. Grant felt his throat dry. This is a death mark. Virith's whisper was colder than space. No, this is a test. He turned to her. Test of what? Her eyes, dark as deep-water predators, locked on his. Worthy prey. Grant felt it then. This wasn't about hiding. This wasn't about escape. This was about proving something. To humanity. To Virith. To anyone who thought Kalari were the apex of the hunt. This killer had rewritten the rules. Not to win. To show they could. Virith stepped toward the lab doors. They knew he would come, she said. Grant didn't doubt it. But he wasn't about to turn back. You still trust your nose? She paused. I trust patterns. Sense fade. Logic does not. Grant holstered his weapon. Good. Because in this game, trusting instincts wasn't enough. The killer was using them against her. Against both of them. But they'd walked this far into the labyrinth. There was only one way forward. Into the predator's den. Into the waiting jaws of a human mind that had dissected Kalari hunting techniques. Not just to mimic them, but to beat them. And Grant knew one thing for certain. Humans were never the strongest species in the galaxy. But God help you if you thought that made them weak. The air inside the abandoned lab was wrong. It was sterile, too clean, like a surgical room sealed in time. The kind of clean that screamed artificial. Humans didn't keep their spaces like this. Neither did Kalari. Grant Mercer stepped inside with his weapon lowered but ready. The old Biosolutions lab stretched before them like a fossil of a forgotten war. Rusted scaffolding overhead, shattered terminals along the walls, biotanks cracked open like dead chrysalis husks. But no dust, no insects, no decay. It was as if the place had been cleaned moments before their arrival. Virith didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her entire posture shifted. Predatory stillness. Tension coiled beneath her polished black skin like a bowstring drawn tight. She moved deeper. Grant followed, slower now. This wasn't an ordinary killer's lair. This was a theater. Someone had staged this entire space, deliberately reconstructed it into a hunting ground for Kalari senses. And Virith knew it. There was no chemical trail here. That was the first clue. Whoever they were chasing had abandoned scent entirely. No cover-up. No masking agents. No bait. Nothing. They didn't need it anymore. That was worse. That meant the hunter was done playing. Virith's voice came low. Controlled. This is not human-level preparation. Grant raised an eyebrow. No. She shook her head slowly. This is obsession. She moved toward a central chamber, a former research vault. The heavy doors sealed shut with new biolocks rigged over old EarthGov hardware. Grant stepped beside her. He didn't see a killer anymore. He saw an architect, someone who'd studied both Kalari hunting culture and human psychology long enough to merge them into something terrifying. And worse still, they were ahead of them, waiting. Grant reached for the biolock controls, primitive tech by modern standards. But what caught his attention wasn't the device. It was the symbol etched into the door. Not Kalari this time. Human script. Simple words. Come in. Grant exhaled through his teeth. You ever see arrogance like that back home? Virith didn't respond immediately. Then, almost thoughtfully, she replied, "Yes, but it was usually followed by corpses." That was the second clue. This wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. Grant keyed the lock. The door hissed open, and the world beyond it changed. The vault wasn't a storage room. It was a gallery. Rows of display cases lined the walls. Transparent tubes filled with preserved biological samples. Not human. Koilari. Bones. Tissue fragments. Artificial scent glands suspended in biogel. The remnants of 100 different experiments cataloged, labeled, and displayed like trophies. Grant's stomach tightened. This wasn't just murder. This was obsession weaponized. Virith walked between the cases like a ghost in mourning. Not grief-stricken, but coldly analytical. She paused beside one. Grant read the tag. Kalari Olfactory Cluster. Combat Variant. Dissection complete. His grip tightened on his sidearm. This is from the war. Virith didn't move. No, this is from after. Grant felt the chill in that distinction. During war, atrocities were strategic. Afterwards, it was curiosity. Twisted curiosity. Grant turned to her. "This isn't about Weiss, is it?" Her answer was barely a whisper. No, the diplomat was bait. Grant had known that. But this room made it undeniable. Whoever orchestrated this hadn't just killed to escape detection. They'd killed to draw attention, to lure the best tracker they could find into their web. And that meant Virith. Grant walked the room slowly, his boots echoing too loudly in the sterile silence. He stopped at the far wall, a series of monitors flickering with active feed. Cameras, not security. Observation, real-time footage of New Geneva. Street cams, government buildings. And one particular feed centered directly on Virith herself. Archival footage from her previous hunts across the galaxy. Grant's stomach turned again. They'd been watching her for years. Cataloging, studying, learning. This wasn't a random human killer with stolen tech. This was a scientist. An apex mind that had decided Kalari evolution wasn't invincible. And now they were proving it. Grant turned to Virith. "Who the hell are we hunting?" Her eyes, sharp and cold as polished stone, didn't flinch. "Someone who believes they've surpassed us." Grant exhaled. And for the first time in his career, a career filled with war criminals, terrorists, and monsters, he felt something rare. Admiration laced with fear. Because this wasn't a monster. Monsters made mistakes. This was a human who had turned the very essence of Kalari biology into a puzzle. And solved it. That was the third clue. This wasn't just survival. It was pride. Grant's jaw tightened. "We find them. We end this." Virith's reply was immediate. "Yes." But before they could move, the monitors flickered. A voice filled the room. Soft. Human. Unmistakably calm. "I wondered how long it would take you to reach me." Grant raised his weapon. The voice chuckled. "Please. You won't find me with that." On the monitors, the image shifted. Coordinates. A map overlay. An old sector deep beneath New Geneva. Disused infrastructure. Long-abandoned chemical refineries beneath the oceanic sectors. The voice spoke again. "Follow me if you wish. But understand this." A pause. And then, words that chilled both human and Kalari blood alike. Predators hunt because they must. Humans hunt because they choose to. The feed cut. Silence swallowed the lab. Virith didn't speak. Grant holstered his weapon. His voice, when it came, was steady. "He's right." She turned to him. Grant's expression was grim. "But what he doesn't know is that we learn faster." And so they moved deeper into the city's forgotten veins, toward a final confrontation not between predator and prey, but between two species. Both of them hunters. Both of them dangerous. But only one of them human. New Geneva's underworld was never meant for human life. Not this far down. These weren't the tidy maintenance tunnels seen in infrastructure schematics. This was deeper, forgotten layers of the city's skeleton where heat coils failed centuries ago and pipes rotted like exposed veins. Grant Mercer followed Virith down corridors older than EarthGov itself. Down here, the air tasted metallic, stale, and laced with damp minerals. Water dripped from unseen cracks above, leaving streaks of rust like old blood down the walls. Even rats wouldn't survive long here. That was the point. No witnesses, no interference, just hunter and hunted. If it had been any other Kalari, Grant suspected they would have hesitated. This wasn't jungle terrain. There were no natural scent markers or biological tells here. But Virith never slowed. If anything, she moved with unsettling calm. She didn't trust this place. He could see it in her posture, but she respected it. Respect was more dangerous. It meant she knew she was walking into the domain of someone very clever. Grant tightened his grip on his weapon. It wouldn't matter much in a place like this. If this was a trap, and it almost certainly was, bullets wouldn't save them. The coordinates the killer left had guided them into a chemical refinery that predated the Kalari Wars. The facility was half collapsed, submerged in parts beneath oceanic runoff. It didn't look like a battlefield. It looked like a maze. Not random either. Built. Purposeful. Grant spoke low. His voice barely carried over the sound of distant water churning through broken pumps. Ever see a hunt like this before? Virith didn't turn. No. She paused at a junction. Narrow tunnels spiderwebbing off in 6 directions. Each passage reeked of something uniquely wrong. Industrial masking agents. Engine grease. Synthetic decay. Deliberate. Kalari do not leave choices in the field, Virith said. We do not offer paths. Grant frowned. But humans do. That earned him a brief, sidelong glance. We do, he confirmed, because that was the oldest hunting trick in the human playbook. Force your prey to make the wrong choice. Not by chasing them, by letting them think they were leading the chase. Virith knelt near the nearest tunnel entrance, long fingers tracing the slick ground. She inhaled through sharp nostrils designed to process what human sensors couldn't even register. And then she made a sound Grant hadn't expected. A dry click of her tongue. Disapproval. This is noise, she said. False trail. False everything. She stood. He doesn't want me to track him. Grant nodded. He wants you to get lost. She considered that, thoughtful, measured, or to learn. Grant adjusted his grip on his pistol. He's testing you. Virith's voice was quieter now. He is studying me. Grant should have been unnerved. Instead, he felt something else. Admiration. Because it wasn't just about the technology or the biology. Any fool with access to black market labs could replicate a Kalari scent signature. But understanding the psychology of the hunt, the patience, the precision, that was something entirely different. That was human. The very thing every alien species underestimated. Virith finally pointed. That one. Grant looked. The tunnel was unassuming. No additional masking. No chemical misdirection. Almost too honest. But that was the trick, wasn't it? Trust nothing. Especially simplicity. They moved. Every step into the refinery twisted tighter, like a coil winding toward inevitable violence. The walls closed in. The scent of ocean brine crept into the air. Piping groaned beneath their feet. Ancient machines still barely functioning out of sheer mechanical stubbornness. That's when Grant noticed them. Markings. Tiny etched symbols barely visible to the human eye, unless you knew what to look for. Not Kalari. Not military. Human. Deliberately carved into the wall at intervals. Strange hybrid codes mixing Kalari hunting glyphs with human tactical shorthand. Coordinates. Warnings. Instructions. But not for them. For the killer. He was leaving notes for himself, tracking his own progress, his own mistakes. Grant's pulse kicked up. This wasn't a madman. This wasn't some obsessed scientist lost to their own delusions. This was discipline. This was methodology. The killer wasn't flaunting superiority. He was refining it. Grant leaned close to Virith. I don't think we're chasing a man who hates Kalari. She didn't answer. He pressed on. I think we're chasing someone who loves you. That stopped her. Not in shock, in comprehension, because there was no greater danger to a species built on dominance than someone who admired them enough to dismantle them piece by piece. Virith straightened. Such admiration is fatal. Grant couldn't argue. It didn't take long to reach the heart of the facility. A massive central chamber, ancient turbines rising like rusted giants from flooded trenches. Catwalks crisscrossed above oily water. The air was humid, rank with salt and chemical residue. And standing on the far platform, as though waiting for them all along, was a figure clad in reinforced environmental gear. Not a soldier, not a butcher, a scientist, Dr. Elias Ward. He didn't run, didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, he inclined his head slightly. Polite, almost reverent. "I hoped it would be you," Ward said. His voice was perfectly calm. Virith didn't move. Grant raised his weapon. Ward chuckled. "Please," Ward said. "You didn't come all this way just to shoot me." Grant's finger hovered over the trigger. "Did not." Ward's eyes, pale blue behind a visor, gleamed with fascination. "You came because you had to know why." Virith's voice cut through the chamber. "Why Weiss? Why the games?" Ward spread his arms. "To show you what humanity can become. Not monsters, not beasts, but students. Relentless, patient, dangerous." Ward's smile was unsettling in its sincerity. "Evolution is a ladder," he said. "Yours is older. Ours is faster." Grant's gun didn't waver, but he felt something colder than fear gnaw at him. Not because Ward was wrong, because Ward might be right. But if there was one thing humans were better at than climbing ladders, it was kicking them over. Grant spoke quietly. "Funny thing about humans, Doctor." Ward tilted his head. Grant smiled. "We build our best traps with bait." Ward didn't even have time to react before the secondary strike team, masked by jamming fields and null zone tech, emerged from the shadows above. Kalari weren't the only species who could hunt. And humans? Humans learned faster, fought dirtier, survived longer. As the takedown began, Grant holstered his weapon. Virith stood beside him, silent, impressed, but also wary, because the game had changed, not just between them, but between species. And in this new era, the no's still new. But logic? Logic would always win. Humans never built fortresses without secret doors. Grant Mercer knew that. Every skyscraper, every bunker, every vault humanity ever raised was born with its weakness already sealed inside. Not by flaw, not by error, by design. Because humanity didn't believe in perfection. It believed in contingencies. And as the strike team closed around Dr. Elias Ward's position, weapons drawn, formation precise, Grant knew Ward wasn't going to fight them. Not here, not like this. Because Ward didn't need muscle. He had already won most of the battle long before Grant and Virith set foot in this rusting tomb. The trap wasn't the refinery. The trap was knowledge. And they had walked through every step of it willingly. Virith stood motionless beside Grant, silent as a sculpture carved from onyx. But her scent patterns, those subtle chemical shifts that only a Kalari could read, told him everything he needed to know. She wasn't afraid, but she wasn't underestimating him either. Ward raised his hand slowly, as if to show compliance. But his eyes told a different story. Not defiant, curious, studying. "You learned faster than I anticipated," Ward said, his voice calm, almost clinical. "Most species are predictable. Not you." Grant kept his weapon trained. "Predictable people don't survive long in my line of work." Ward's faint smile was unsettling. "They don't survive long anywhere worth surviving," Ward replied. The strike team began their advance, step by cautious step, fanning out to cut off retreat paths. But Ward wasn't retreating. He gestured slowly to the environment around them. "Everything I've done here wasn't just for demonstration," Ward said. "It was data collection, proof of concept, to show that Kalari hunting superiority isn't biological destiny." Virith's gaze never shifted. "You killed to prove something?" Ward's expression didn't flinch. "I don't kill for the sake of it," he replied. "I kill to learn." Grant's jaw clenched. "You murdered a diplomat." Ward's reply came without hesitation. "I removed a variable." He wasn't boasting. He wasn't grandstanding. He was correcting them. Cold, precise, clinical. But Grant had seen this before, not in aliens, in humans. Engineers, designers, men and women who saw systems instead of people. Ward's next words cut through the humming silence of the refinery. Kalari rely on superiority of instinct, scent memory, olfactory dominance. But what happens when your prey erases its trail completely? Virith's eyes narrowed. Grant realized the truth as soon as Ward said it. This entire labyrinth hadn't been a hunting ground. It had been a test chamber. Chemical suppression zones, scent nullifiers, molecular disruptors. Every twist in this rusting maze had been calibrated to counter a specific aspect of Kalari biology. Ward had created a perfect dead zone for their species, and he wanted Virith to know it. "You can't win with instinct here," Ward said. "You'll have to rely on something else." He wasn't talking to Grant. He was talking to her. Kalari evolution had never required adaptation like this. Until now. But Grant saw the mistake Ward had made. The fatal assumption. Humans didn't survive because they were stronger. They survived because they were ugly, messy, irrational, capable of breaking their own rules the second those rules stopped working. Virith spoke softly, but her words echoed with unsettling clarity. "You studied us." Ward nodded once. "For years. You cataloged our techniques. Relentlessly." Virith stepped forward. "But you never fought with us." Ward hesitated. That was it. The flaw in the design. Studying prey wasn't the same as surviving them. And Kalari weren't predators because they had the best noses. They were predators because they learned fast. Grant stepped alongside her. His words were quieter now. Measured. "Problem with human-made cages, Doctor." Ward's head tilted, curious. "They never hold forever." And at that exact moment, the refinery shuddered. Low, deep, almost imperceptible. Ward's gaze darted upward. Virith's voice was ice. "You were studying us," she said. Grant smiled. "We were studying you." Ward's eyes widened. Because this wasn't just a takedown. This was their trap. Grant had radioed a drone swarm hours ago. Stealth models armed with low-frequency resonance generators tuned specifically for ancient refinery infrastructure. Human junk. But human junk that would collapse this entire maze like a house of cards once activated. Ward spun. Too late. The hum grew, rising into a hollow metallic roar as support beams began to groan and snap. Grant's voice was low, hard. Your perfect hunting ground just became your tomb. Ward moved fast, impossibly fast, towards an emergency exit route buried in schematics Grant had deliberately left unguarded. Another trap. As Ward sprinted, Virith was already moving, faster than any human eye could follow, intercepting him mid-stride. No hesitation, no words, just action. She caught him by the throat, not to kill, to prove. Kalari didn't need perfect conditions to hunt. They adapted. She leaned in, so close he could feel the faint vibration of her scent markers igniting along her skin. "You studied our biology," Virith whispered. "But you never understood our will." Ward struggled, not in fear, in realization. Grant keyed his calm. "Evac now." The refinery groaned, structural collapse imminent. Ward's last words before the blast doors slammed shut behind them were a whisper of genuine admiration. "I was right about you." Virith didn't look back. Grant didn't either. The maze crumbled behind them, a slow-motion funeral pyre for Ward's obsession. When they reached the surface, gasping in clean air, Grant turned to her. "You think he survived?" Virith's answer was unsettling. "I hope so." Grant raised an eyebrow. "What?" She turned to him, expression unreadable. "Because the next hunt will be better." That was the difference between humans and Kalari. Humans hunted to survive. Kalari hunted to become stronger. And Grant suspected Earth had just earned a place in their legends. Some men build fortresses to keep enemies out. The clever ones build them to trap enemies in. Grant Mercer had learned that long before the Kalari ever set foot on Earth. Long before the galaxy cared who humans were. Long before anyone believed in a species that bled easily but refused to stay down. But Elias Ward was still alive. Of course he was. Grant should have known. Because men like Ward didn't build monuments to their brilliance without backup plans layered beneath backup plans. The refinery's collapse hadn't killed him. It had set him free. And now, the hunter had become the hunted. Grant and Virith stood at the edge of Sector Null, a dead zone carved beneath the old transit systems. No surveillance, no drones, no comms relay. Ward had chosen his last battleground perfectly. But so had they. The city above them pulsed, oblivious, lights of glass towers and orbital traffic bleeding color into the ocean mist. But down here, there were no lights, no maps, no rules. Grant checked his weapon, not because it would help, but because humans needed rituals, familiar things in unfamiliar places. Beside him, Virith crouched near the ground, inhaling the dead air. Nothing. Perfect masking. She rose slowly. He's done hiding, Virith said. Grant didn't flinch. Neither are we. Their approach wasn't fast. Speed would kill them. Ward hadn't survived this long by leaving gaps in his perimeter. Every step forward was a risk. Every angle designed to break Kalari instinct and human pattern recognition alike. No direct attacks. No crude ambushes. Just environmental death. Tunnels flooded with heatless plasma fields. Light so pure it fried organic compounds without flame. Pressure plate corridors that mimicked Kalari footfall weight to misdirect and trap. Chemical fog that altered memory receptors. Grant marveled at it in spite of himself. This was more than obsession. This was artistry. But even the best engineers made one critical mistake. They forgot that life didn't follow blueprints. Virith didn't rely on her nose now. She relied on Grant. Human intuition. Human chaos. Left, Grant said without hesitation at the next junction. She didn't question him. Her steps matched his without sound. And slowly, very slowly, the maze began to fracture. Ward had designed this death trap, assuming humans wouldn't adapt. But that was the lie all the galaxy told itself. Humans didn't adapt because of strength. They adapted because of defiance. The rules said stay down. They stood. The rules said die quietly. They raged. And when they raged together, nothing in the galaxy could anticipate the storm. Minutes stretched like wire. Grant could feel Ward watching them, not with cameras, but with anticipation, measuring their progress like a test he hoped they'd fail. But then they reached it, the heart of Sector Null. No grand vault, no throne room, just a clean, empty space carved in concrete and old alloys. Simple, humble, built for efficiency. And standing in its center, waiting, Ward. Unarmed, unmasked, just a man. Tired, sharp-eyed, dangerous. You surprised me, Ward said without mockery. I didn't think anyone could navigate this sector without falling into error. Grant lowered his weapon. You built this place expecting perfection. Ward smiled faintly. And I underestimated imperfection. Virith stepped forward, her posture calm. You learned faster than most, she admitted. Ward tilted his head, but not fast enough. He gestured to the walls. My entire thesis was built on the idea that Kalari were constrained by biology, that humans were only free because of chaos. Grant's voice was hard. You were wrong. Ward didn't deny it. He simply looked at Virith. You're not bound by instinct. No, you used your greatest weakness as your weapon. Virith's gaze didn't soften. We learned from humanity. Ward exhaled, quiet, almost relieved. Then I achieved what I came here for. Grant frowned. You expected to lose? Ward's smile didn't reach his eyes. No, I expected to be outgrown. He stepped back, slowly, hands raised not in surrender. In peace. I spent my life dismantling Kalari's superiority, breaking instinct into data, reducing apex predators into code. He paused, and in doing so, I created something worse. Grant's voice was ice. Us. Ward chuckled once. Both of you. Silence settled. Not heavy, not hostile, just the weight of history shifting beneath their feet. Ward didn't resist when Virith stepped closer, claws at the ready, the final hunter's gesture before the end. But she didn't strike, because the lesson had already been learned. The game wasn't about killing. It was about evolution. Ward nodded once. Tell them what happened here. Virith's voice was cold. I will. And in that moment, for the first time, predator and prey weren't enemies. They were reflections. Two species standing on the edge of something new. Grant keyed his calm. Extraction ready. Ward looked around the sterile chamber, his life's work. And then, he smiled. Not in victory, not in defeat, in pride. Because humanity had done what humanity always did. It learned. It adapted. And then, it surpassed. The last steps out of Sector Null felt heavier than Grant Mercer expected. Not because of exhaustion, though his body ached from hours of moving through Ward's engineered labyrinth, but because something had shifted. This wasn't just the end of a case. This was the end of a world. Above them, New Geneva was waking, a city that slept with one eye open, trade hubs buzzing, skyscrapers humming with orbital data traffic, life moving on as life always did, unaware that beneath their feet, a hunt older than species and older than war had played out. Grant and Virith reached the extraction point, awaiting transport cloaked beneath stealth canopies, hovering just above the decay of forgotten tunnels. Ward sat quietly within, cuffed but unbroken. He didn't struggle, didn't plead. His work was done. The proof was standing beside him. Koilari, human, together, predator and predator, coexisting because the alternative, dominance, had failed. Grant slid into the seat across from Ward. "You built a masterpiece down there," Grant said, voice even. Ward inclined his head. "Not arrogance. A craftsman's pride. I built a mirror," Ward replied, "to show you what was waiting on the other side of instinct." Virith remained silent beside Grant, but there was no hostility left in her. No wrath. She had moved beyond that. She was a Kalari who had witnessed something rare. The refusal to submit, not through violence, through understanding. Ward's voice was softer now, measured. "I knew one day we would meet," he said to Virith. "Your people believe in dominance through nature, but nature changes." Virith's answer cut with precise clarity. "Nature adapts." Grant leaned forward slightly. "You know what's coming next, Ward?" Ward smiled faintly. "Interrogation. Analysis. Dissection of my work." Grant shrugged. "Maybe." He let the silence hang. "But maybe not." Ward's eyes lifted, faint curiosity stirring. "You're not going to bury this." Grant shook his head. "We're going to publish it." Ward blinked once. A sharp exhale of genuine amusement escaped him. "Of course you are." Grant gestured to Virith. "We're going to let everyone see what happens when humans meet a superior predator and don't bow down. We learn, we adjust, and then we change the rules." Virith spoke without looking at Ward. "And the Kalari will learn from that too." That was the real ending. Not a death, not a trophy, but a lesson. Ward had thought the Kalari were static, frozen in evolutionary pride. He hadn't seen what Grant had seen. Virith was already calculating, already incorporating human chaos into Kalari order. A new predator was emerging. Not human, not Kalari, both. The transport lifted, engines low and whisper smooth, rising past the ruins of Ward's dead maze into the neon-lit world above. Grant sat back, exhaustion pulling at his muscles, but his mind raced with possibilities. New Geneva would wake today the same way it always did. Oblivious. But the stars? The stars had changed. Ward turned one last time to Virith. "Do you hate me for what I did?" Her answer came without hesitation. "No." Ward looked almost relieved. "Good." Then she finished the thought. "Hate would mean you matter that much." Grant actually smiled at that. Not cruel, not vengeful, just honest. Ward leaned back. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I'm glad it was you." And in the end, Grant believed him. Because the game had never been about the kill. It had always been about the hunt. When they reached the surface, the sun was just cresting the horizon, bleeding gold over steel towers and glass bridges. A new day, a new era. Virith turned to Grant as they disembarked. "You said humans trapped their enemies inside their fortresses," she said. Grant shrugged. "Sure." Her gaze lingered on the rising sun. "Maybe one day, humans and Kalari will build fortresses together." Grant looked at her, really looked. Not as an alien, not as a hunter, but as something else entirely. A partner. His voice was quiet. "Maybe we already have." And that was how the hunt ended. Not with death, not with victory carved in blood, but with respect, earned the only way it ever mattered. Face to face, hunter to hunter, humanity never needed to be the strongest. It only needed to survive long enough to become something more. And now it had.